Hey guys, Chris from Provo Beast Audio Installation, and in today's video we're doing a backup camera on this 2012 Jeep Patriot. Now in this install we're going to show you how to integrate that backup camera to an existing aftermarket radio. Let's get started. Alright, so here at the bench now, the camera kit that we're using for our install today is this AutoVox license plate mountable camera, where it includes a bracket that mounts to the studs of the license plate. The bracket goes behind the plate, not in front of it. Additionally, this kit includes a long harness to connect your camera all the way to the video source that you're using to display that camera's image, in most instances an aftermarket radio. The RCA yellow end will connect to the camera input on the back of the radio. It also comes with an integrated trigger wire in the event in your install you don't have any way to trigger your aftermarket radio to go in reverse as soon as you're backing up. This usually would connect to the purple white wire on your aftermarket radio, or whatever radio is designated as that reverse trigger. This receptor end where your camera will connect. Also on this end you'll have a power and ground, and essentially here this is designated to ground the camera and power the camera whenever you're backing up. The easiest way, or option number one, would be to simply just power this camera off of the power and ground of your reverse light. So as soon as you're backing up, your reverse light will see power and ground. And if we tap into those power and ground feeds, it will power the camera for us as well. That's where this trigger wire will get its 12-volt current, is from this, because it's wired in parallel. And that's why you would connect that through the reverse trigger. That's option number one, and that's usually the easiest way to hook it up. However, you can go a step further, and instead of wiring this only on power when reverse, you can actually wire this on accessory, and essentially our camera will be on whenever the radio is on. Because the downside of just powering this off the reverse light, it's only on when backing up, and that's the only time it can be useful. If you wire it on accessory, it's on whenever the radio is on, and some radios have the option to call upon that camera at any time. If you want to go that route, the way to wire it is, instead of powering your camera only on the reverse light, power and ground, we'll cap this end off. So we're not going to power the camera at the reverse light, we'll still ground it. And then this end, instead of using this as a trigger wire, we're instead going to feed accessory into this harness, and it's going to power the camera whenever this sees accessory 12 volts. Remember, you cannot hook this up to and power the accessory, or you'll backfeed your reverse lights and you can cause damage to your vehicle. What this is going to do is instead power the camera whenever that radio is on, so we can call upon it at any time. In our case, we're using a smart harness by Crux, and that smart harness is providing a reverse trigger already for us, so we don't have to run any additional wiring. The reverse trigger is already provided at the harness behind the radio, because it's picking it up through the CAN bus of our Jeep. So you have to decide whether it's option one or two. Option number one, just powering the camera off the reverse light, is the easiest, but option two will give you the most features. With that all out of the way, let's go ahead and grab our camera. Let's head to the vehicle, start tearing apart the hatch so we can get this mounted at the license plate area and start feeding our wire into the cabin of the Jeep. Alright, so we went ahead and temporarily got our camera on here. Now we need to pass this wire through the hatch into the inside of it. Now, to do so, there's actually a grommet right there that we can utilize to pull our wire through, but we have to get to it. There's going to be some 10mm nuts and clips holding on the license plate light housing. That's going to give us access to pull the Jeep emblem off. So let's go ahead and get this removed, modify it, and pull our wire through. Alright, so we popped this piece out as you saw here. There's a clip here, bolt and clip. You have to also unsnap your cable So this all comes out as a whole slit in our grommet here, so we can fish our camera wiring through. Now alternatively, there is a blade here for a key cylinder, which we don't have, but once we pierce through that, we compromise the seal. So it's totally up to you. If you go here, you want to reseal that. Fortunately, with this grommet, it's going to seal and keep the weather out regardless. Now, we also put a little notch in this bezel so our wire doesn't get pinched behind license plate bezel and the hatch of the vehicle. That's where it'll pass through, goes through our grommet here into the inside of our hatch. So we can at this point now reassemble everything in reverse order. All right, so we got this all back on here. That little notch there so it doesn't pinch the wire. Looking good. Now we can put the plate on. Again, the plate goes over the bracket. Got our cable all reconnected here. Got our two 10 millimeters and our clips are all back in place. So where that wire now passes through that grommet, comes down here along the factory loom. We zip tied it down up underneath. Now at this point in time, we're at the junction where our camera needs to connect into the extension harness. Again, depending on which version of your wiring configuration you're going with, if you simply power the camera off of the reverse light, you'll have to extend this red and black wire and pull it through the grommet, and you're gonna have to go to the reverse light, which is down here in the tail light. Since our aftermarket radio is a wiring harness adapter, the smart harness is providing a reverse trigger, we're gonna instead power our camera off of accessory, and all we need to do is ground the camera back here. So we cut this short. We black with a blue stripe on our vehicle as a factory ground. So we did the smaller gauge here. We actually just soldered in there. We're gonna wrap that with some electrical tape. Since we're not using this end and we're gonna power our camera from the other, we went ahead and put some heat shrink on there to seal that up. What we're gonna do now is we grabbed our extension harness, fished it through this channel, we pulled out our grommet, and now we're going to prepare to pull our wire through the OEM rubber grommet. A hanger or middle wire as our fish, and we have already fished it through this grommet. Popped it down, and what we did is we taped our video wire to it here, and we're going to lube this up with some soap and water. You want this as slippery as possible because there's not a lot of space to work this on through, and we don't want to damage our wire. So get a lot of soap and water in there, make it nice and slippery. And what we're gonna do is pull it on through here, and that'll pass on through. Then we'll move our video wire down through this hole. We have to pull this out just enough so we can pull our wire down. And then essentially we're working our wire towards the dash cavity. All right, so we went ahead and pulled our wire on through there. Like I said, we looped that up really well so it could easily pull through with our fish. And then we fed it through the hole and just pulled it right on out there. Just pull our stripping back temporarily. What we're gonna do with our wire is basically we're gonna run it down this wither seal, and we're gonna pull out the floor here so we can run it underneath our panels. We're gonna work our way forward along kip panels all the way to the dash cavity. So at this point here, we can go ahead and reseal our grommets, and then we can reassemble our back hatch. All right, so we reassembled the back here. We have our wire running through up underneath the seat going forward. Comes out underneath the seat. Now we're just gonna be tucking it under panels, or about this point here. The gauge is small enough where you can tuck it up underneath the panel. If you wanna remove the panel, that's fine. Just be careful to pop the clips carefully so you don't break them. Essentially here, we're gonna keep moving them along, tucking them under panels, all the way up to our dash cavity. So we continue just tucking our wire under the panel. We came up here, and then up underneath, we went ahead and zip tied it to this cross brace all the way across so it doesn't fall down at all in front of the pedals. And we pulled our wire up through the dash. Now obviously here you didn't see us pull the radio out or put in an aftermarket one in this specific video, because we covered that in part 1 of this video series, where we actually went ahead, removed the OEM radio, wired up a new harness and assembled the dash kit and installed a new doubled in the factory location. If you want to see that video, we'll link it down in the description, and it walks you through step by step on how to get this all apart. So we went ahead, like we mentioned before, pulled our backup camera wire through. Now we had a little extra, so we just bundled it and zip tied it up. Remember, we're not using our trigger wire here as a trigger, because our smart harness for our aftermarket radio provides a trigger wire which it pulls through the CAN bus of the Jeep. So instead, because this will go unused, we're going to repurpose this wire to power our camera. So we're going to send power into it, as it's going to power all the way to the back at the camera location. Now, what we're going to do is grab our harness adapter. When we prepared our harness, teed into the accessory red wire of our harness adapter, and we have an accessory here as well. And so we're going to go ahead and plug that in there and crimp in. And then this RCA goes to the RCA camera input on the back of the radio. Now, let's start making our connections at the radio. Plug in our main harness, backup camera wire. Let's go ahead and test everything to make sure it's working properly. So at this point in time, we can go ahead and reassemble the dash. Okay, so with everything now reassembled here, let's go ahead and put it in reverse. Perfect. We pull it out of reverse. That's working great. Also, since we wired a camera on accessory, at any time we can hit camera button and use that camera at our convenience, besides just being in reverse. Hence the benefit of the way we wired it. So that's about it for this install. If you have any questions on what we did here, go ahead and post a comment below. If you like this camera or the parts that we're using in this install, we'll make sure we link them also in the description. And if you want to see how we installed this radio, as mentioned before, we'll link that video in the description as well. Be sure to hit the like button if you liked what you saw, and don't forget to subscribe. We post great content on the channel all the time. We'll see you in the next video.